here's where we really get down to business. In this video, we'll talk about auditions, and we're going to work through the typical rehearsal process. In this part of the production process, the main people involved are really just the director, the stage manager, and the cast. Casting the show is one of the most important jobs the director has, and one of the most difficult. The director has to find the best people for the roles out of who shows up. There are two main types of auditions you might encounter: the cold read and the cattle call. In the cattle call, the actor shows up with typically two contrasting monologues or songs to perform. There's a large group of people auditioning, and one by one they go in front of the director and possibly members of the creative team and perform. They don't usually have long, typically no longer than a minute per monologue. It's a method used to audition a lot of people. You see a cattle call on reality competition shows like American Idol, where they take a stadium full of people and reduce them to a handful of folks. A cold reading is where the director hands you a scene to read, either by yourself or with other actors who are auditioning, with very little, if any, preparation, hence the cold reading. It allows the director to see how quickly you can adapt, read, and take direction. It also lets them try out how you look with other members of the cast. Those are the sort of things they're going to look for while they're auditioning you. Once the show is cast, they start the rehearsal process pretty immediately. The typical stages of rehearsal are the read-through, blocking, interp, tech, dress, and final dress. Let's look at these more closely. The read-through is as it sounds. The cast reads through the play together for the first time. This is where everyone hears what the characters sound like for the first time. It's also where the cast can ask questions, talk about the play, and hear the director's vision, because they usually will discuss it here. This could be one rehearsal or several, depending on the play and length of the rehearsal process. Blocking accomplishes two main things. First, it establishes the movement, the choreography of the actors. They don't typically move around on stage as they feel. The director will tell them to physically cross from one place to the other when they say their line. But while doing this, the director is accomplishing the other purpose of blocking. They are intentionally arranging the actors on stage. They have to look at the overall picture that the actors create. They can arrange for visual interest and good composition, to draw focus to an actor, and to establish that someone is in power in a given scene. To tell the actors where to go, the director uses stage directions.
As you can see in this diagram, the stage is divided into 9 areas: upstage left, upstage center, upstage right, stage left, center stage, stage right, downstage left, downstage center, and downstage right. Left and right are according to the actor's perspective, not the audience. And up means you're going towards the back wall of the theater. Down means you're going towards the audience. This comes from the fact that old stages used to be raked. That is, they were tilted. So an actor moving towards the back wall would actually be going up in elevation. And I think that's pretty cool. A quick word about the types of theater spaces you can find and how they affect blocking. There are 3 traditional types of theater spaces and 2 that are a little less so. The main types of theaters are the proscenium arch, the thrust, and the arena theater. The other 2 are the black box theater and the found space. The proscenium arch is marked by 3 things. There is 1, an actual arch, sometimes referred to or described like a picture frame, that frames the action on stage. Typically, the actors perform behind it. 2, and you can kind of see in the tiny diagram here, there's something called an apron. This is a part of the stage that extends beyond the proscenium arch. In the Fine Arts Auditorium, the apron is fairly large because we built out on top of the orchestra pit. And third, the relationship of the actors to the audience is straightforward. The actors stand on stage and the audience is directly in front of them. That means for the director, they have to arrange their actors in a way where they don't turn their backs to the audience for any long period of time. So basically, the actors are oriented outwards most of the time. Okay, with the thrust, you can see that the apron essentially kind of scooches out from the back wall. And most of the performance takes place here. And so what we have as a defining characteristic is you have the stage that comes out, and then you have audience surrounding the performance space on three sides. To take that a step further, you have the arena stage where the performance is in the middle and the audience is surrounding it on four sides. So with the thrust in the arena, the director has to consider that they have audience in more than one place now. So they have to kind of play to the different sides. As a side note, scenery is a little different with the thrust in the arena. Whereas in a proscenium arch, you can kind of construct a big full set. You can't do the same with thrust and arena as much because if you put a wall up in the middle of the space, it would block off the view of audience members. So in either case, with the black box theater, you have a space that is typically smaller, but it can be configured in any way to depending on what the play needs. So you can see you have movable seating down here, and there's a lighting grid overhead where the theater could kind of really just do whatever they want. It's a really great space. It's got a lot of flexibility. And then the found space is just where a production takes place in the space that's not intended for a play, like a church or a grocery store or the sidewalk. This picture included here is from a production I saw in London where a theater had done a show in the vaults under the London Underground train station. So that was pretty cool. So whatever the space, the director has to take into account where the audience is. So that's a quick thing on the theater spaces.
Interp, short for interpretation, is where the actors work together with the director and each other to find their character, work out their motivation from scene to scene, and generally put the flesh on the bone of the part they're playing. Rehearsal will have been up to this point picking away at the play in parts, as in we'll work on scenes 1 through 4 tonight. But here it starts to transition into full run-throughs around this point. This means, as it sounds, that the cast goes through the whole script in one sitting. They'll also be typically expected to be off-book by this point. That means that they've memorized their lines well enough that they don't have to hold the script. And you can't do interp while holding a script because it's impossible to be natural. So if they drop a line, the stage manager can feed it to them for a little while. But as they get closer to the show, the actors have to work through it like it was an actual performance. Tech rehearsal is where all of the sound, lighting, and moving set elements are worked into the rehearsal. There are two main goals here. The cues have to look and sound the way the designers intended, and the crew has to rehearse the cues and scene shifts. Tech usually happens a week or less before the show opens. These are long rehearsals. They can run anywhere from an hour or two longer than a normal run-through, up to a 13-hour day. Ugh, nobody likes those. A rehearsal or so after first tech, dress rehearsal will begin. These are intense and often difficult work for the actors. They may have to walk off stage at the end of a scene and come back on stage 30 seconds later in the next scene in a completely different costume. This requires rehearsal and often costume changers off stage who actually help the actor change clothes quickly. And then we have final dress. Final dress is the last rehearsal before opening. It's supposed to run like an actual performance. And there is a superstition that a bad final dress means a good run, which probably just comes from actors being terrified when that last rehearsal looks like the whole thing's going to be a train wreck. Okay, that's all for auditions and the rehearsal process. Do you like auditioning? Have you experienced a cattle call or a cold read? Talk about this or anything else having to do with the lecture on the discussion board. See you next time.